City Council regular meeting for Monday, April the 24th. Can I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Holman absent. Councilmember Kellogg.
Present.
Councilmember Moorhead.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Councilmember Holman. Present. Mayor Turnbow.
Here. And could you all please rise and join me in a Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have no presentations or awards tonight, I assume, and no personal appearances listed on our agenda. So the next item is staff reports. Mr. Feuerborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Ms. Warner to make a staff report from the City Clerk's office.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. One reminder of the Missouri Municipal League's Westgate meeting and dinner will be held May the 19th in Excelsior Springs. If you plan to attend, please let the City Clerk's office know. Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you, Ms. Warner. I would ask that Mr. Krass make a report for the Public Works Department.
Thank you, Mr. Feuerborn. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, in addition to my written report, wanted to make council aware of a couple items that are going to be causing some traffic impacts this week. Tomorrow, we're going to be finishing up the work at the Huntsman 58 Highway intersection. There's a settlement in the pavers we're going to be repairing. There's also some striping that's going to be placed there, so that intersection is going to be closed from 8:30 till 4 o'clock. We've put some information out on Facebook regarding that. The detour will be the same as it was before, detouring Forks over to the Mott Drive signal. Also, KCP&L on Thursday is going to be replacing the electric meters on the traffic signals along 58 Highway. That changeover is going to take about 5 minutes, and during that period of time, each signal is going to be taken out of service. We're working with the police department for traffic control, and hopefully that project goes smoothly. That concludes my report.
Okay. Any questions, Mr. Kraft? Mr. Kellogg.
Not so much a question, a comment. As I was going to my doctor's appointment today, I noticed a contractor up at the new 58 and Huntsman intersection there, the median, and I noticed they were putting mulch in there today, and it makes that look really, really nice. I thank the contractors for following through with that, and it looks, just want to say it looks nice, and glad it's moving along forward, and thank you for the update on that intersection.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Mr. Feuerborn.
Thank you, Mr. Krass. I would ask that Mr. Icky make a report for the Communications Department.
Thank you, Mr. Feuerborn. The Arts Commission is excited to launch the second pop-up art project, Relax in Raymore. Everyone is invited to decorate, paint, mold, enhance, and add their own twist to the classic Adirondack chair. If you remember the pop-up art project from last year, we had residents from throughout the city as well as organizations, and I think some members of the council as well, that participated. The big reveal will be at Summer Scene on June 10th, where we'll have all of the chairs collected in one place at TB Hanna Station. Residents and other panelists will be able to vote on their favorite chairs. Prizes will also be awarded for the most creative and interesting designs. We then keep the chairs on display throughout the city throughout the rest of the summer. Anyone who is interested in signing up can visit the Arts Commission website at raymore.com/popupart to sign up and register, or they can call 816-892-3109 if they're interested or have any other questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Mike. Mr. Feuerborn.
Thank you, Mr. Icky. Next week's work session for May 1, 2017 is going to be a gala of Centerview events that we will be needing to discuss with the council. First item that we'll be on is the update and the upcoming schedule for Centerview relative to opening events, if you will. And the second item is we'll be showing the council and getting your input on the dedication plaque that goes into the front of the building. The last item will be a discussion about the names of the Centerview rooms. You may remember Several months ago when we brought you the name of the building, we also discussed possible room names, but then the council focus turned towards what the name of the actual building was going to be. I wanted to revisit that with the council because we're at the point in time where occupancy load signs for each of the rooms have to go up, and we have to, for the policy for Centerview, we need to be getting areas called out. So I wanted to revisit that with the council at that time. So that will be next week's work session meeting. Also wanted to alert the council that 2 weeks from tonight, there will be a somewhat depleted room here. The APA conference will be taking place in New York. Mr. Cataret will be there. Our planner will be there. I will be there. Mr. Anderson will be there from Planning and Zoning. Mr. Moorhead will be at that conference as well. So we are making every attempt to make it a fairly light agenda for the council that particular evening. That concludes staff reports, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of staff? Okay. Committee reports. Mr. Moorhead.
The Charter Review Committee met last week on the I believe the 18th. A very expedited meeting. We're at the point now to where we're at the last 3 articles. We believe we can get that done in one session. At that point, what we'll do is we'll go back. We have a couple issues. Instead of bogging ourselves down, we've kind of kept thrown some out there that we know we'll kind of re-argue and kind of reassess. At that point, we'll put a cumulative list together, and at that point, we'll be at a point where we can present for the council consideration. So we are wrapping up relatively quickly.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? And Mr. Holman, Branding Committee?
Yes, sir. Branding Committee met last Wednesday, the 19th at 6 p.m. Here at City Hall. It was what is now the final meeting of the Branding Committee. All members were present. We did learn that Desiree Kanovic, am I saying that right, of the Arts Commission actually accepted a job out of town, so she was unable to fulfill that commitment. She'll also be leaving the Arts Commission, but Mr. Icky was there, Matt Davidson, the mayor, Lauren Jones, myself, Harriet Lawrence, and then our consultants, I guess is the term, Laura Lynch, and then Megan, who used to work for us, it's now working for Laura, was here for the first time in a capacity as a non-city employee, and then a co-consultant, or I guess we would call Mr. Fullerton, who was the creator of the proposed logo that you'll be seeing soon. We started off with a review talking about logos and taglines for competing cities in the area of like size and in the general vicinity. And we talked about what sets Raymore apart from those cities. There were 4 specific arenas that we focused on, and that was best of both worlds. It's easy to call Raymore home, family-friendly, connected community. We're ready for business, and we love our town. We had seen the proposed tagline last time. That was brought to us again, and then we saw the proposed artwork for the new logo, which I must say looks very nice. That logo, the tagline, and all the rest of that information is intended to be presented to the City Council in full at a work session on May 15th. So lots of opportunity for you to see that and some discussion and input, but I think that you will like what you see, especially when you see how it brings the city together and how it works against, or how it compares against, rather, other cities in the area. I think it's a really bold move forward. I think the mayor would share my opinion with that. You'll be seeing that in a couple of weeks, and as I stated, that will conclude the Branding Committee unless we don't have any anticipation right now, but should the committee need to come back and do further work, the mayor would reconvene, but at this point, we're finished with the committee.
Right. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. Any questions of Jay? All right, moving right along. Next item we have is the consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda tonight.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda to include items A, City Council regular session minutes for April 10, item B, City Council special session minutes for April 10, item C, the public improvements for Westbrook 12th of Creekmore final acceptance, and D, corporate authorization regarding banking signatures.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda, all 4 items. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. That moves us into unfinished business. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3264 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3264 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving and authorizing a contract with J&M Displays in the amount of $16,000 to provide pyrotechnic services.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3264?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3264 for an award of contract regarding J&M Displays.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3264. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes 8-0. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the meeting of the Raymore Municipal Assistance Corporation. So I would ask for a motion to recess in order for the RAMAC group to meet.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we recess the regular council session meeting to conduct the RAMAC meeting.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to recess the regular meeting for the purposes of meeting as the RAMAC, which is the Raymore Municipal Assistance Corporation. Mr. Zur, do we need a roll call vote on that particular recess motion? I believe so. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously. So we'll now convene the business meeting for the Raymore Municipal Assistance Corporation. Do we have a staff report?
So you have to take a roll call.
Oh, yep, got to do a roll call there. Thank you.
Director Abdelgawad?
Here.
Director Barber?
Here.
Director Berenson?
Here.
Director Burke?
Present.
Director Holman?
Present.
Director Kellogg?
Present.
Director Moorhead?
Present.
Director Townsend?
Present.
Director Turnbow?
Present. We have a quorum. And now do we have a staff report, sir?
I thank you, sir. I would ask Ms. Watson to make all of the staff reports associated with this particular item of business tonight, sir.
Thank you, sir. The RAMAC Corporation is a nonprofit organization that was incorporated in July 1997. The purpose for the corporation was to provide additional source of financing for the city of Raymore. This particular corporation financed the stormwater and park improvements that just recently paid off in March of this year. Staff recommends that RAMAC continue to be in existence with the city, even though we do not currently have any financing on the horizon or a need with the charter corporation. We have the capacity to do the financing that we need at this time, but it's a simple annual registration just to keep the corporation ongoing. So staff recommends that we do keep this corporation going as an additional option for us in the future. So at this time, recommend approval of the minutes for April 25th, 2016.
Okay. So is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes for the meeting of April 25th, 2016.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the minutes of the April 20, what was meeting?
25th.
25th, 2016 meeting. Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Anything else?
The next order of business is election of officers. The slate of officers before you is recommended simply as what we have always done, but you're welcome to amend the slate as you please.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to elect new officers for RAMAC, specifically President Mayor Christopher Turnbow, Vice President Derek Moorhead, Secretary Sonia Abdelgawad, and Treasurer Cindy Watson.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the slate of candidates as stated. Is there any additions or deletions from that particular or any additional motions to approve for any of those positions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously. Anything else?
And then the final matter that I have before you is that I would like a formal vote to continue the RAMAC organization.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we continue the Raymac Corporation for one more year.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to continue the Raymac Corporation for an additional year. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Anything else, Cindy?
No, sir, that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adjourn the Raymac meeting and move that we return to the regular meeting of the City Council.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded that we adjourn the Raymac meeting and reconvene the council meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously. We're now back in regular session. Thank you. Thanks, Cindy. Next item is a discussion item, is the revocation of occupational license and liquor license for the Pit Grill and Bar at 1242 through 46 West Foxwood Drive. Requires a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time and ask for a staff report.
Thank you, sir. I would ask Ms. Warner to make the staff report on this item.
Thank you. The City of Raymore has been notified by the Missouri Department of Revenue that the retail sales tax license of the Pit Grill and Bar located at 1242 through 46 West Foxwood Drive has been revoked. I would ask for Chapter 600 and 605 of the Raymore City Code, the letter of revocation received from the Missouri Department of Revenue, the notice of suspension sent to the business owner, and the notice of publication be entered into the record. The letter that was sent to the business owner provided official notice that the establishment's occupational and liquor licenses had been suspended pending a public hearing on this date before the City Council. In accordance with City Code Section 600.090C, any person providing testimony pertaining to the liquor license will be sworn in to tell the truth, and such testimony will be entered into the record. And I do note that the business owner is in the audience should council have questions.
Okay, thank you.
Staff report.
Okay, any questions of staff at this time? If not, the public hearing is open, ma'am. If you'd like to come and address the council, be sworn in first prior to your testimony.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Actually, this issue has nothing to do with me not paying sales tax. My payroll company, Paychex, who pays my employees, generally files all of my forms that have to be filed for federal, state, whoever they are. Because of all the mix-up we had back in December, first part of January, with my bank holding my funds, my Paychex department did not file my stuff. I did not know that at the time. I got notification that stuff hadn't been filed.
And when did you receive the notification?
I don't even have that with me. I'm sorry, because I
That's
left
okay.
my Paychex thing at home. I was running, trying to get here, not to be late.
Okay, go ahead.
But it was after January. I
Okay.
know that, because it was due the end of January, evidently. Yeah, because it was for the fourth quarter, which ended at the end of December, so it was due the end of January. So it was February or March I was notified. I notified my tax company and said, look, I'm told these are, no, I notified my Paychex company. And, well, my tax company told me I had to notify Paychex. They tried to check in on it. There was nothing they could do. They said, check with your payroll. I got with my payroll company. I said, I thought you guys filed these, and they said because of your bank issue, we didn't. You had to file them. I said on the phone with them, there were 3 forms they told me I had to file. One of which was a 941, a 940, and one had to do with Social Security, I believe. I filed those forms. I thought everything was fine. I went back. I sent, what the state was saying was I didn't file 941. That's what they were looking at, and that's why they called everything due then, because they said I didn't file 941. I faxed a copy of my 941 that I filed to my tax company. They sent it to the state, and then all of a sudden, today, this morning, I'm notified, no, that's the wrong 941. Evidently, there's a Missouri 941 and a federal 941. I'm calling it federal. And so I turned around, called my Paychex company back again today and said, there's nothing said, there's no 941 in this packet. When I talked to you on the phone and made all these other forms and mailed them in and signed them, I said, nothing was mentioned about a Missouri 941 form. I don't even know what form that is. Well, luckily, my tax company went ahead and faxed me the form so I know what it looked like. So my payroll consultant looked it up, and she actually had to sit on the phone with me to help me. Oh, well, let me back up. She said, oh, yeah, we file your 941, Missouri, but we never send it to you. And I said, so did you file this or not? And she said, no. And I said, I have to have it filed now. And she had to sit on the phone with me and tell me how to fill it out, because I didn't know what figures were supposed to go in there or anything, since she told me they don't send copies to me. So she helped me today. I faxed it back to the tax company. The tax company faxed it back to the state. So they have it. It's just that by the time we went through all this process with me finding this out today and trying to get today, then the state closed. So they did give a number and said if anybody wants to call them, they will verify that they've been talking to us and that we're getting reinstated. But their office just, they closed.
Okay.
So I have, well, it's in the email. I can give you the phone number for them. I can give you the phone number for my Paychex consultant so she can verify that they never send those out to me, is what she told me. She can verify she sat and helped me filled it out. She can verify I've talked to her more than once on the issue. Tax Lord Cut can verify. I can give you their number. They can verify we've been going back and forth on this. So I just wanted to make it clear because it made it sound like I wasn't paying sales tax. And I wanted to make it clear this had nothing to do with the sales tax issue. It had to do with filing a report issue that I thought my Paychex company did and didn't find out till later that they didn't file it. And then on top of that, even when I asked and I said, okay, this form, this form, this form, that's all I have to file? She said yes. And I brought that up to her today too. She goes, well, we normally don't send those to you. So, I mean, I've done everything I can do from this end. I just got to wait for the office to open back up in the morning.
Is there a specific request that you have of this body at this time?
This issue should be taken care of within 2 days at the max. I'm assuming it's going to be taken care of tomorrow. But because they had me overnight them a form, I don't know if by the time they get the form tomorrow, so that's why I'm saying 2 days. If they get it in the morning, I'm assuming it'll be resolved tomorrow. If not in the morning, I'm saying 2 days the next day, because they were just waiting on the stuff from us. They did get this by fax, and my tax company, I had to fax them another form, which they'll fax them in the morning, but I also had to send something overnight. So
Okay.
if I could have at least 2 days or end of the week, whatever. Like I said, I've been dealing with this for over a month. and I had no clue that there was a Missouri and a federal. My tax company didn't even tell me that, and I know you're going to tell me ignorance of the law, but when I sit and ask, is this all I have to file? And they said yes. And then I just find out today, because they sent them the other 941 that I filed. And then that's when the state finally got back with my tax company and said, oh, that's the wrong one. We don't want the federal. There's a Missouri. And that's the first time I had ever heard of that one.
Okay.
And I have gone over everything with my payroll company now, and I said, so we're back on even keel once this is done. I said, you're doing the filings again because the whole issue with the bank, and she said, oh yeah. She goes, it was that quarter that they didn't do it.
Okay. Mr. Zer, do you have anything to add or any questions for the licensing?
I would simply note for the council, there is provision within the terms of the code indicates that a requirement would allow for a dollar figure that would be contested by the applicant in good faith, and if she is seeking a resolution which is being diligently pursued by the applicant on that matter, simply reference to the code sections on this.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Zer or the applicant?
Again, State of Missouri said I could give you their number and they would verify for you that we were doing this. They said they couldn't talk specifics, but they could verify for you that they have been in contact with us and everything is in the works.
Now, what does this,
So, if you-
this specific form, how does that
I
specific form?
did bring the form.
How does it keep you in business, though? I mean, how is that, the filing of that
The
form?
form-
If you are not in arrears of any of your back taxes, correct? You've been keeping
I
up with
was
your
on a payment plan
plans?
that we had set back
Correct.
up,
Uh-huh.
okay? And I've paid all of my regular monthly from here on out,
Uh-huh.
ever since we met last. That's due every month. I've filed those. What happened was, and I guess they're all connected. I'm sorry, I don't understand, but because this was not filed, they said I was in violation. And so that's why they revoked, is because they said this was not filed.
Okay. Jeannie, can you add any clarification to those particular forms? Are you used to working with those within the confines of a business?
I am not, sir. That's an internal function of each business. Perhaps Mr. Zer may?
Okay.
This particular form says employer's return of income taxes withheld. So I guess it notifies the state of how much we withheld on income tax.
Okay.
And I guess that goes to the same department that sales tax goes to. That's what I understood today. But like I said, I've never, ever in the past filed, I never even knew. Because Paychex always took care of that stuff.
Mr. Feuerborn, can you shed any light?
Sir, if I could ask the council to reference on page 93 of 127, the actual revocation notice relative to this, you will note under section 144.083.2 of Missouri Revised Statutes, the possession of a retail sales license and a statement from the Department of Revenue that no license is owed, that no tax due under sections 144.010 to 144.510 or sections 143 to 191 to 143.261, meaning no taxes can be owed. If no 941 for the state of Missouri was received, that could possibly be interpreted by the Department of Revenue as a tax owed, even if it was paid. They require the forms to go with those payments. The Missouri does have their own separate 941 form, so a federal form would be different, and if it was received by the state of Missouri would be wanting to know for tax reasons so that they could true up what was coming to them relative to income tax for that particular portion of the filings that we just now had to do on April 18th with the state of Missouri. That would be how they would be truing those up. So if the form was not received, the state could be interpreting that as a tax not received. That is correct, sir.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions this time? Is there anyone on the council willing to make a motion at this time on what direction we want to take? Oh, that's true. It is still open. Thank you. Do you have anything else to add, ma'am?
No, I think I've told you everything.
Okay.
Unless you want the phone numbers for everybody.
Okay. All right. I assume Jeannie has those. Do you have those? If you'd
No,
like to
I can-
provide those
I
to
can
her,
provide them to Jeannie.
that would be awesome. All right.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
all right.
Any additional questions of staff? If not, I'll close the public hearing at this time and open the floor for further discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
did she confirm, I didn't quite catch the answer, so the taxes that were in the arrears, those are current, is that correct? That's what she answered?
I would ask for clarification on that. Mr. Zur or Mr. Fearborn?
I believe she indicated she was on a payment plan at this particular point with regard to those taxes due.
But the payments on the payment plan are current?
I want to confirm that.
Yeah, the last time all this happened, they put me on a payment plan. So as long as you're on a payment plan, you're no tax due. You're good as long as those payments are made. But because the form was not filled out, then they said I broke or because they did not receive that form, then that's reason for them to say I broke the agreement.
Okay.
But they said once that form got filed again, they would reinstate everything.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, for clarification, because Mr. Berenson's question actually can be deemed twofold, because we actually have a separate issue here. The sales tax is not in question. It's the employer tax under the same section. Now, the forms, you cannot assess the withholding tax until the form is filed. So even if the form is filed, that does not actually guarantee that that was paid. So
That's what I had
therefore,
to send
that's where the
overnight.
no tax due letter comes in, because you can file and be compliant with the filing requirement, but still be delinquent on the tax. So just receiving the forms is not sufficient. It must have the payment as well.
That's what I had to do overnight, was a $744 payment. That's what was due on that form.
Okay. All right, thank
Okay.
you. Any additional questions?
Sir, could I make one point of clarification for our new council members? When you go delinquent, now back to the sales tax portion of it, just because from an educational standpoint, there are actually two sales tax payments in addition to the payroll tax payments from the 941 that are due to the Department of Revenue each month. When you're on a payment plan, the reason that there are two due is you're making one payment, which is the payment plan payment, which you've arranged with the Department of Revenue. At the same time, you are required to make your regular payment that would be due on any given month at the exact same time. So at any given time in a situation like this, there are actually several payments that are due and owed to the Department of Revenue in any given month.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Kellogg?
I guess I would have a question that probably the applicant can only answer. I don't know. Where I'm having difficulties with is, and I'm not trying to be rude or facetious here, but you're giving me testimony that the actions were done today. Today is April 24th, and the packet that I'm looking at says that the letter that we received from the state of Missouri, our city clerk, is dated April 5th. I'm just having a real difficult time because I haven't heard any explanation as to why there's been 19 days that I don't see any action being taken care of at that time. If you can explain that to me, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. There was action taken, and I probably wasn't clear on it. When I got hold of my Paychex company and said, look, I'm being notified that a certain taxes report hasn't been filed, they went over and told me 3 forms: a 940 form, a 941 form, which is a federal form, which I didn't realize at the time. I just knew it as 941. And then I believe, like I said earlier, the third one had maybe to do with some other tax, but it's some other employee tax that we take out. I filed those 3 prior to today. That happened prior to today. So I talked to them. They gave me these 3 forms. I said, this is it. This is all I have to file. Paychex said yes. I filed those forms. And then I had been trying to get back hold of with Cutler Tax since last week, saying I hadn't heard anything back. I need to know, did they, is this all okay now? These are all filed. This morning, after trying to call 3 different times, I had an operator go hunt one of the people down at Tax Cutler, and she called the state. That's when I found out today it was this other form, 941. So I had previously filed 3 other ones, which I was told was what I needed to file. And then come to find out today, there was the 941 Missouri that I knew nothing about, and Paychex told me they don't send those to us.
Mr. Moorhead.
So yeah, I had previously done other stuff that I thought took care of the situation, and then found out today it did not, because there was a 4th form involved.
One, I'm glad that this is not a sales tax issue, because if it would have been a sales tax issue, you can understand why the council would be pretty upset about that.
And that's why I wanted at the very first to say, this really has nothing to do with sales tax.
And I appreciate that, because that does actually affect me tonight and how I was intending to address this. I have to be careful here, because as a tax professional myself, I'm very concerned about some of the things that you're indicating to me. Since I deal with ADP, both with all of the county payroll that I audit ADP on, but in addition, personal clients that have used ADP. ADP does not submit money. They can only submit money with forms if they have the money to pay the form. If they were given too little, then they cannot file a form and partially file, because they bear some liability on this.
And I think that was the issue why they did not file the forms.
And that's, and
Because that, if you remember right, that account was frozen at that time,
I understand that.
which I didn't know, that they didn't file.
I had the privilege of sitting with the chief counsel of the Missouri Department of Revenue last week over sales tax issues and withholdings tax issues unrelated to you. But weirdly enough, and that section 144.083 deals with, it doesn't deal with all taxes. It deals only with with sales use and withholding taxes. So income taxes would not apply. And so, but basically, everything screams application of the statute. My concern is section 144.118 says that once you receive that revocation, you can't be open. And that has nothing to do with this council, and that there's a daily fine. And this is where I'm concerned back on your ADP, because right now, as Mr. Kellogg brought up, you're looking at $2,400 in fines from the State Department of Revenue. Now, the forms that get filed every month, you have two. You have the 940 and the 941. And those of us that got our W-2s and did our taxes know that you have your normal withholding, that's the stuff you claim to get money back, and then the rest of it, and that includes FICA, all that goes into those forms. The 941 is a quarterly form, the 940 is the annual. You only do that once a year on December 31. That's why you had the uniqueness of 3. The third form is the state form. And if all of us think about our pay stubs and look at that, the very bottom where it says what state you're in, and then it says what state taxes were withheld, that's that form. And so I'm concerned that these are fourth quarter issues, and we're in the second quarter. So we're almost 4 months later on this before all this comes about, which is of concern. But according to the state, they are very clear, this business cannot operate, and it says 14483 requires statement from DOR that no sales tax or employer withholding is owed. A retail seller must have the no tax due statement in order to get a city occupation license and any license regarding liquor. We can do stuff here tonight, but technically, until this no tax due letter shows up, even if we give you a continuance, I hope you have been aware that you're in violation of state law every day, regardless of what we do. We can say you can be open tomorrow. The state doesn't.
I
I'm just
totally
alerting you on
understand that, and that is at least one area that the state has been kind to me on, and they've never charged me that in the past. They've let me get reinstated in the no tax due thing, and they've never
And I'm
charged
hoping
me.
that they waive those fines that have been accruing. Are you very confident, and are you intending to be very diligent? Mr. Zur read the specific language that your actions are in good faith and resolution which is being diligently pursued. You're saying over the next 48 hours you believe you can get this resolved.
I am saying that, and all the numbers that I'm going to give Jeannie tomorrow, they can confirm that for you. I mean, it hasn't just been today, I've been dealing with them before today. So it was just, once they finally notified me that it was this Missouri form, it was later in the day, and by the time I got back home to Paychecks again to get them to help me to fill it out, I got it scanned back in, faxed to the state. She faxed it back to the tax company. They had to fax it back to the state. By this time, the state's closed. Otherwise, had I known it even earlier this morning when I tried to call, it probably would have been taken care of today. I'm just waiting on the state to reopen and to get my check that I mailed them now.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
We still have open public hearing?
I closed it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I closed it.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. At what point are we in discussion amongst us now, or?
That's what we were.
That's what we were?
Unfortunately, we drew the applicant back into the process.
And I'm partially responsible for that, but I apologize, and I confused myself, so but I do have a question for us.
Sure. We're in-
Moment, just point of order, Mr. Zur is parliamentarian. Should we have a motion and a second to then have discussion, or is it appropriate to have discussion prior to a motion?
Well, you have generally done a motion and a second and then had your discussion. That is your normal practice at this point. I don't know that that is necessarily required under your current rules, but I would suggest that you maintain normal operating procedure for it.
Quick question, point of order.
Go ahead.
Have we closed the public hearing? Or is that the problem?
Yes, you have.
Public hearing is closed.
Public hearing is, okay,
Yeah.
then that's,
So I would entertain a motion at this time in the event that we want to have further discussion. So is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to revoke the business license of The Pit in accordance with Section 605.040 subsection B and C of the city charter. In addition, I move to revoke the liquor license of The Pit subject to Section 600.080, but ask for a stay of 72 hours, which is through April 27th at 11:59 for the applicant if they can satisfy and produce a no tax due letter, then the revocations will be waived and they will be in good standing.
That would be a stay of enforcement, Councilman?
Stay of enforcement, yes.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to revoke both the occupational and liquor license under the current statutes with a stay for 72 hours until 11:59 PM on a date specific. What date is that?
27th.
The 27th. And if everything is satisfied by then our revocation and occupational license and liquor license will also be stayed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Motion is seconded. Any further discussion? Mr. Kellogg.
Question, probably of legal staff. And I appreciate, Mr. Moorhead, your wisdom you've given here. And you brought up some very good questions for me, and particularly this one. I'm not going to ask you for legal advice because you're a colleague. Right. I'm going to ask our lawyer for legal advice at this point. Again, Mr. Moorhead brought up some very good points, and I didn't hear any contradiction or any wiggles from our attorney, but I'm going to ask this. Mr. Moorhead alluded to that the state regulation clearly spells out that what we can and cannot do as far as if there's any tax withholding that is not paid or due. The regulation he read out said that they shall basically, and I'm paraphrasing, they shall be revoked and not able to do business. The motion that's being made and considered right now tells me that we're going to stay this until the 27th at 11:59 p.m. In essence, my question is this: are we superseding the state statutes, and what are we within our rights to do this in this procedure?
You are currently, the motion that I have heard is that it will be revoked. My information is that we will stay enforcement of that revocation for a 72-hour period of time in order to allow her to become in good standing, or I'm sorry, to receive the no tax due letter. The state of Missouri does not go out and specifically close down, at least they haven't for a while gone out and specifically closed down. They have requested that the cities take that particular action. They have requested that we institute the process in order to do so in their letter, their revocation letter, their revocation notice to the city. My analysis would be that you are not superseding, you are instituting the process that's allowed to you for revocation of that business license at this time. You've simply indicated a holding of the enforcement portion of that for a 72-hour period of time, but the motion and approval will in fact be, as of this evening, that you are revoking their liquor license pending that additional condition. And occupation license.
Mr. Moorhead.
And for clarification, again, I'm only stating my personal, I'm only stating my personal opinion on this. But when I spoke with the Department of Revenue unrelated to this, the application of these laws became more clear to me. First of all, state preemption dictates that we cannot pass a law or do anything that contradicts a higher authority, both state or federal law. In this particular instance, Section 144.083 of the Missouri statutes dictates they've shut her down. If she chooses to open, she's doing that, and we don't really actually have a say in that. We have an occupational license, we have a liquor license. We can, if the state says it's okay, we can then do things. In this particular instance, if we approve her tonight and allow her to stay open, we have the ability to do that. But that doesn't prevent, state officers from showing up in the morning and finding her the $2,400 and shutting her down independently. We don't trump the state. So in essence, anything we do here really doesn't change the state's approach. We cannot interfere with the state. Now, if we choose to revoke, then she has literally no safety net, and she's operating in essence in direct violation, and she bears her own burden. So in this particular instance, I hope she can get things resolved. I mean, she's indicating 48 hours. I'm asking to give 72 hours, go ahead and give the extra day. I don't want to run to Friday because I don't want to burden Ms. Warner at 4:59 to try to hustle something through, and that is an extension longer than what was requested. But what we do tonight does not change the state. So I'm merely saying we go ahead and suspend this for the 72 hours in courtesy to her request. That way, if she gets this all done, then it achieves the burden of having both the state and us in compliance simultaneously. But if, a week from now, if she doesn't have anything done, or even on Thursday, if the state does something, our approval tonight does not interfere with their ability to do their normal stuff. So I think we need to start looking at these things, and I actually asked a member of the state council to come speak at a work session to educate us on this, because these really are not that powerful. Our ability to grant licenses, if the state says no, we can hand out licenses all we want and still doesn't protect them from higher authorities. So, this is a very empty approval tonight if the state says no. So,
Mr. Zur, you care to add to that?
I would simply reaffirm Councilmember Moorhead's comments on that one and note you'd indicated suspension, but you have actually made your motion for a revocation of it at this particular point, I believe.
that's correct.
Yeah, so.
Yes, Mrs. Belgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is, other than the time frame, which we tend to, move based on the request of the applicant and the evidence that we're given, this is the same thing that we've done several times before that's been fine with our attorney, fine with the council. So this isn't something new we're doing. It's a different time frame because of what the applicant asked for tonight. So just to clarify that, this isn't something new we're trying tonight that we've never done before.
Mr. Moorhead.
And to kind of dovetail, because that's a very good point by Ms. Abdelgawad, is in previous instances, we've had applicants who we've given 30 or 60 days extensions. But the one thing it's been made very clear to me is that never interfered or changed the status of the applicant, because the state still had the authority to do whatever they wanted to do at their level. So the fact, whether we give a continuance or not, the fact that the state of Missouri, effective January 1 this year, is actually rehired revenue officers to go out, and the phrase used to me is, we are going to start going to every county now and dealing with these problems that we've been delinquent on. Whether they come into our county or our city and do this has nothing to do with us. So whether we're generous, whether we're mean, we're only affecting at our level. And so, again, the applicant asked for 2 days. Let's give her an extra third just to get the chance. I really hope that she gets to it. She's gotten to issues in the past, so there's a certain element of faith there. So I'm not being negative toward her. But whether we do this or not, if the state shuts her down, our license doesn't protect her.
Thank you. Mr. Burke.
I wanted to speak in favor of the motion, but it seems like there are times that the state, because they are not spending funds to take care of these things themselves, that many times we are stuck with the burden of enforcement, and it seems like that we are using an inordinate amount of staff resources here at the local level to do something that the state really should probably spend their resources to take care of. And if anyone has the opportunity to have those conversations at a state level, it'd be appreciated by this body, I would believe.
Anyone else? Mr. Holman?
Thank you, sir. It gives me no pleasure to do so, but I must vote in opposition to this motion. It has nothing to do with the weight of the measure. It has to do with when we set rules, at some point, we have to apply enforcement of the rules, and we have to draw a line in the sand. I was very clear in the last time that this applicant was before us that I would not vote for any further extensions, and I will not tonight, even 72 hours. I suspect the motion will pass, and you will be given your 72 hours. I wish you the best. I like your business, and I wish you to be very successful. However, what is fair to you must be fair to everyone else. Therefore, I will be voting in opposition to the motion.
Thank you. Anyone else? There's no further discussion. There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion? I have 6 yes. Those opposed? 2 noes. Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is the governing body members on Planning and Zoning Commission. As I had stated earlier, my intent is to continue to work on with the group there on the Planning and Zoning Commission as your representative, but I would open the floor for discussion at this time on if there were any other ideas with regard to that, or if anyone else has interest in serving on the Planning and Zoning. Mr. Moorhead.
The Charter Review Commission actually spoke about this at our last meeting, so it was kind of weird and timely on this. And in talking about some of the history of our commissions, one of the key discussion points was the level of communication. And the general feeling that we derived during that discussion was that as long as there's good communication, we're good. And then, with the mayor specifically being on planning and zoning, we do have, in essence, a Monday night member who is there at that, who can communicate with us on that. I know that we've had issues in the past where there's been some discussion about appointing a council member, and the charter does actually allow us to have a council member if we choose. But I know this isn't a formal vote, so I'll just say, so it would be my encouragement in this particular instance, we have such a good communication level with planning and zoning, and we have the mayor on there. I really don't feel we need another member on there. I think we're doing quite well. It's not just the desire to stay status quo. I think there's a legitimate reason why we should stay the same.
Okay. Anyone? Mr. Holman.
I would concur with Councilmember Moorhead's comments. I think that you are a good member and a good communicator of things that are going on there, sir. I would like to keep the status quo as well.
Okay. Ms. Abdelgawad.
I agree.
Thank you. Mr. Kellogg.
I'm missing Mrs. Schubach tonight, but I will say this, since I am the senior council member on this council, the justification or this justification isn't the word I'm looking for, but it fits, but the justification of previous councils that I've been on, when this topic comes up, was that we have not chose to serve on that extra seat, with the reasoning of being that those issues are going to be coming to the council anyway, to avoid the possibility of conflict or those discussions. That's been the historical reasoning and justification behind us not doing that. So I appreciate the dialogue, the conversation, and I will also be supporting not to appoint one of us to that. It's no slight to the P&Z by any means. What they do is they do great work, but I don't want to muddy up those waters.
I understand. Mr. Berenson.
Mr. Mayor, I also agree. With a quick question, maybe this is for Mr. Moorhead. Does the charter allow the mayor to appoint an alternate in his absence if he can't go to the meeting? Or is that kind of out of the ordinary?
That would be a wonderful question for Mr. Zur and Mr. Fairborn.
We actually researched that relative to our conversation a couple of Saturdays ago, so it does not.
Okay. Thank you. So absent any objection, I will continue to serve on the Planning and Zoning. Any further discussion on that? If not, we'll move on to the next, which is the selection of the Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Holman?
Mr. Mayor, I nominate Councilmember Moorhead as Mayor Pro Tem for the coming year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, you don't need a second for the nomination? Okay. Sorry. All right, are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations? All those in favor, well, we don't have a motion. Is there a motion to accept the nomination? I mean, don't we normally vote on that?
I think you'd have a vote based upon the nomination that was provided, or you can do it by acclamation at this point. I would suggest you just do a quick vote.
All right. All those in favor of the nomination? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Nomination approval. It's 8-0.
Correct.
I counted them. Okay. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3266 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3266 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending Chapter 545, Property Maintenance Code of the Raymore City Code.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask that Mr. Cataret make the staff report for this item.
Thank you, sir. The Property Maintenance Code was initially adopted by the city back in 2007. It's an important tool that's utilized by the city in its efforts to ensure properties are maintained to an established minimum standard. Our code enforcement officer utilizes this code on a daily basis, and it utilizes various elements of the code to help maintain the health, safety, and welfare of the Raymore residents by enforcing these minimum property standards. A few years ago, we started an annual review process where staff will sit down and review the code to determine if any additions or modifications are necessary to enhance the effectiveness of the code. Bill 3266 proposes 6 minor amendments that would accomplish the following 6 items. And these are the proposed amendments that came out of that annual review. First, it would modify the penalty section to be compliant with Senate Bill 572. It would eliminate the requirement for notification on repeat violations. So if we have a property owner that's been notified once in a calendar year, and we have the same repeat violation on the same property over a second or a third or a fourth time, we do not have to do notification that second, third, or fourth time. Staff would utilize this section of this proposed amendment if we truly have a monthly repeat violation. And this is specific to tall grass violations, not to other types of violations. We do have several properties where repeatedly every month we're going through and re-notifying them, and it creates quite a bit of angst for the neighbors. They continually call, and their response is, why do I have to keep calling to get this property mowed? Well, you don't, because we're very familiar with it, but we have to continually wait until it's a violation, then provide a second, a notice, and then we can go and abate. Once you're notified, you've been told for that calendar year, this is the rule. You have to mow your property when it reaches this height. And we don't have to repeat that notice. It's a tactic that several other communities have utilized effectively, and we would like to utilize that as well. Third request deals with requiring a property owner to cut or bale hay twice a year. Okay, this doesn't apply to agricultural properties. It applies to a few properties that are residential or commercial zoned where residents are utilizing the undeveloped property for hay. And most property owners properly use that exemption from mowing by baling hay. But we have a couple of property owners that we do have instances where they are not taking care of the property properly. We think they're just utilizing it to not mow the property. And we want to place the requirement in the code that they do customarily, when you have hay, bale it twice a year. The fourth requirement would be to change the language requiring accessory structures that they be free from any holes in the exterior surface. It's just a clarification of the language that we currently have in the code. The same with the next item, where we specifically want to indicate carpeting materials and pallets are on the list of discarded objects that can create a nuisance. And finally, regarding the discharge of water, and this usually would be from a sub pump, you're required to limit the discharge pipe from a sub pump to be 5 foot from a property line. But a lot of individuals take it right up to 5 foot, and they're basically discharging it right to their neighbor's property, which is legal by code. The only thing we want to clarify is that it can't create an erosion problem. So if the water is being discharged and being dispersed and not creating erosion for the neighbor, no violation. But if it's creating an erosion issue directly on that adjacent property, then an adjustment would have to be made on that discharge pipe. So we want clarification on that item as well. So staff does recommend approval of Bill 3266 that's before you this evening. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions of Jim? Mr. Burke?
I actually have 2 questions on 2 different parts. First one is about weeds. So if I'm correct, it's 8 inches. 8 inches is the cutoff, or the length that they should have had to cut before. Is that correct?
It's correct for developed properties. It's 12 inches for an undeveloped
All right.
lot.
So let's say that someone receives notice in April, and they have a great year, April of 2017. And let's say that in September, one weed grows to the height of 9 inches in their whole yard, and the rest of the yard is fine. We're not going to give them even a courtesy email or text or call or anything before we assess them monetary damages that they have to repay the mowing?
What I can indicate is this, we've had this discussion, because this exactly goes to the point of how we would administer that particular code language. We wouldn't have to, we certainly would. If we provided you notice in April and you didn't have another violation until September, we'll send you that second violation notice and let you know that's second notice. The intent of this is for the month after month after month repeat violators. But yeah, I agree with you, out of courtesy, and I struggle even with doing that. I like to caution on providing notice before we do anything. So this is a big step for the department to recommend this, but it's really intended for those repeat month after month violators.
Second scenario, okay, so September 2017, they have a violation, and then they have a second violation in April of 2018. They would get another notice because it's a different calendar year, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Forgot the rest of that. And then to the erosion issue. On erosion, is there any, can't even think of the word. The neighbor, if they do not have any turf established in sections of their yard for a long period of time, can they come back and then say, well, this person's creating erosion on my property, like after they had work done on siding and they had or their foundation issues, and they had heavy machinery in their yard and they have yet to reestablish turf, can they come back and then later on say, hey, you have this, you're creating erosion in my yard, but yet they haven't established turf in that yard for years? What would be the burden of proof as far as erosion?
It would be a determination the code officer would need to make at that time of inspection. We would expect that adjacent property have proper landscaping turf or some type of landscaping material. If it is at a state of construction activity or post-construction activity, or just doesn't have grass on the property or some type of vegetative cover, we would address that differently than we would if they did. There's a reasonable expectation that this code section would apply if the neighbor has vegetation on their property. And that's what's being eroded away.
Thanks.
Mr. Ullman?
Yes, sir, thank you. I'd just like to offer Councilmember Burke the use of my mower before his weeds get to 9 inches, so you can keep Mr. Catteret at bay, sir.
I mowed my yard at 6 inches yesterday because I'm trying to establish turf in areas that I've never been able to get anything to grow, and previous owners couldn't get anything to grow there either. Rocks may be in order next, but I am actually getting things to grow there, but separate issue.
All right. Mr. Kellogg?
I will vouch for Mr. Burke. Rocks do grow. They grow in my yard very well. Quick question, couple. Section 4 speaks to, of what I'm looking here, is Section 4 of the agenda, speaks to Section 545.425 accessory buildings. And it's speaking to basically the siting or structure of an accessory building and free from holes in exterior walls or surfaces. Does this apply to other than accessory buildings also? Because I can have a home on my property and I can have an accessory building on my property. Do the same rigorous standards apply to my main house structure as it does the accessory building, or are we only addressing accessory buildings tonight?
The code language already applies to a principal building on the property, but since there's a separate section dealing with accessory structures, we wanted the same language in that section of code.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies that. Now, moving on to Section 5 of the agenda item, nuisances, 545.445. And I want to express the intent of what I think this says, but this doesn't say what I think my intent is. It doesn't specifically call out tires, and I'm kind of, I do know that it says in here cars and objects of similar objects. It does say that, and it also, in A, says garbage and rubbish. But it does specify automobiles, furniture, stoves, refrigerators, freezers, cans, containers, and then in yellow, carpeting materials, pallets, or similar objects. And I appreciate what the planning and zoning has done for this, but it's one of those things that is one of those claws in my side, the tires. And I guess this is conversation for up here. Do we want to include specifically the calling out of tires on that? The reason why I say this is because it's such a harbage for rodents, snakes, and all kinds of other things to live inside of. So that's what I want to bring up.
Mr. Holman. Well, two things. I think Mr. Cataret's got something to follow on with that, but I know for a fact that tires in the state of Missouri are regulated by the state level very heavily, almost not quite, but just under the level of hazmat. They're a regulated commodity, and the state is generally on top of that pretty quick. But I think, did you have something to add on to that, Mr. Cataret?
Yeah, excellent question regarding that. It's just not covered in this particular section of the code. The item number 13 is addressed elsewhere within the property maintenance code. The issue of automobile parts and tires is included as well, and other aspects of the vehicle if they are abandoned or discarded. So we do have a section of code. It just wasn't identified as part of this item.
You were on a roll, Kevin. You got anything else?
No, but I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Mr. Moorhead.
Mr. Cataret, for clarification, though, we have automobiles and we have tire sections in other areas, but we mention automobiles here again. If we were to include tires, would we be in conflict with any of those other sections? Because I agree with Councilmember Kellogg. There's a uniqueness about tires, and batteries are the other one related to vehicles, that have to have special sections because there's not only the nuisance factor, but there's an environmental concern with the materials. So if we made during our motion to add the language tires here after the word automobiles, would that be in conflict with any other sections?
It would not be in conflict, and in fact, if you could utilize automobiles, automobile parts, tires, if you want to get that specific, but it would not be in conflict if you add tires.
Just be an additional enforcement measure, correct? Yep. So wish to make a motion to amend?
I don't think we've actually, have we had a motion on this?
No, we haven't had a
I don't think
motion
we have.
on
We're
it.
still at staff.
We're still in
Still in
discussion.
staff. Okay. You have anything else, Mr. Cataret?
No, sir.
All right. So is there a motion to approve the first reading of Bill 3266?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3266 regarding amendments to the Property Maintenance Code in totality with the amendment on Section 5 regarding Section 545.445, Section A, Section 13, subsection B, to include the word tires after the word automobiles.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve Bill 3266 with an amendment. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Could I please have the reading of Resolution 17-18?
The reading of Resolution 17-18 by title only, a resolution of the City of Raymore, Missouri approving a corporate authorization by and between the City of Raymore, Missouri and Community Bank of Raymore.
Is there a staff report?
Excuse me.
17-18.
Hold on just one second, sir. Jeannie, the item you just read was for the consent agenda. If I can get there very, very quickly, I apologize.
No, sir, my apologies. A reading of Resolution 17-18 by title only, a resolution of the City of Raymore, Missouri authorizing the discharge of special fireworks pursuant to Section 215.060 of the Raymore City Code of Ordinances.
There you go. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is, sir. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a staff report for this particular item.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, members of council. Tonight, we passed, with second reading, the contract for J&M Displays to do our fireworks show. Tonight, right now before you is a resolution authorizing staff to shoot those fireworks, especially this year on July 1st, according to Section 215.060 of the Municipal Code. According to that section, it requires that the show be free to the public, and it has to be by resolution of the council if it's any day other than July 4th. So that is what's before you now. We're seeking that approval.
Thank you. Any questions of Nathan? Mr. Moorhead?
Mr. Mustine, I remember when we were talking about this in a work session, and one of the things we talked about was trying to go to July 1st. This would be kind of a one-time event so we then can evaluate. And I know Mr. Zur had mentioned, according to our city code, that there were timeframes we could not, without council approval, shoot off fireworks. So we would have to come back to the council. So for clarification, either of any staff, is if we approve this resolution, are we doing this in perpetuity? Is this a one-time approval? And are we subject to, depending on when the calendar dictates, having to come back and doing anything unique under the code?
I'm happy to respond to that one. This would apply only to the 2017 fireworks display. As provided for under the terms of the resolution, you'll still have the opportunity to come back next year in order to evaluate whether or not that's an ongoing or continuing effort.
Okay, perfect.
So any deviation from July the 4th is going to require a resolution, especially when we get to a time frame that could be outside the parameters of the city code that allows for the firing of fireworks, I think is what one of our concerns was about that. Okay. Anything else for Nathan? Anyone? Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Is there a motion to dispose of Resolution 17-18?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt Resolution 17-18 for the resolution to discharge the city's public fireworks display on July 1, 2017.
I'll second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve Resolution 17-18. Any further discussion? Mr. Burke.
I just wanted to mention, I talked to one of my constituents about this, and their direct quote was, "That's stupid. What are we going to do on July 4th?" And that person was Kara Burke.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3257 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3257 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the fiscal year 2017 operating budget.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. The council will remember that over the course of the past month, there have been a number of amendments in front of you relative to the organizational chart, the reorganization associated with the overall organizational chart. As a part of that reorganization, we did create a communications department headed by Mr. Mike Eakey. The ordinance in front of you this evening removes the expenditure budget from where it is currently residing as a community outreach department, a sub-department of the administration department, and actually amends the budget so that the communications budget resides under the communications department that has been formed by the council. The Exhibit A that is associated with this is actually, you will note that it is 01-01, which is exactly what you are seeing in the administration department as far as the community outreach division is concerned with that. We will simply be removing those exact budget line items and residing them under a department of their own. And that's what this amendment calls for this evening. That concludes staff report.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Thank you. Hearing none, is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3257?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3257 for a budget amendment regarding the Communications Department.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve Bill 3257. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We're at the portion of our agenda for public comments. Anyone wishing to address the council at this time, please come forward, identify yourself for the record, and keep your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Craig, nothing? Okay, all right. All right, we'll move into mayor-council communication. I'll start with Mr. Moorhead tonight.
Very brief. I am very sincerely humbled and appreciative to serve as the mayor pro tem for the city, and thank you for the council member support. I know that there are a lot of very good qualified people that can do the same thing, and I know that throughout the year when the mayor is unavailable, there have been times I've been unavailable and other council members have stepped up and represented the city, and I feel that we have a good group of people, so we have 9 good council people on this dais that could at any time represent the city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wanted to thank this is kind of strange, but thank the Parks Department for providing lots of good spaces to fly kites. My children have finally figured out why the backyard in between the house and the lake is not a good place to fly kites. They didn't believe me until they had to figure out how to get it off of the house and out of the trees. And anyway, thank you so much.
Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to thank the staff for your outstanding support of the city, everything you're doing. Unfortunately, this evening regarding the particular business having to approve the revocation, but suspending it, I hope that businesses take the opportunity to not only be a good patron and a good business, but also look at the books and take some whatever necessary steps to get some training and look at some opportunities for some things with the Small Business Association, other resources, linking up with the Chamber of Commerce and networking and finding opportunities to, well, you may be a good restaurateur or a mechanic or a painter. Books may not be your thing, so you may need to find some opportunities to seek assistance to be in good standing with the city and with the customers that you serve. Thank you, sir.
Good advice. Thank you, sir. Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to talk about Earth Day Friday. I had a chance to help with the linear park cleanup there in Eagle Glen, and which little help I was able to do, but it was really nice to be able to do that with staff. And I'd like to thank Steve Rouleau and Jeff. I can't remember Jeff's last name.
Schmill, sir.
Can you say that again?
Schmill.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to work with those two. And I want to thank them publicly for helping me out, because they were really watching me. They knew what they were dealing with. So not that that's a bad thing. I'm still not recovered 100%. So that was really, really good to participate in that. Also, I appreciate staff and the agenda tonight with the amendment to the property maintenance code. I've been taking some calls from a particular constituent in Ward 1 along a undeveloped area. I'm getting winks from staff. They know who I'm talking about. They know the area. I just hope that this here gives a little bit of tools in the toolbox that staff needs to help alleviate some of those problems down in that area. And I appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. I do have a couple of things. I want to say thank you to Councilmember Barber for something he took care of last week. I'm going to leave it there and let him finish it in his comments. I want to say kudos to Matt Tapp. Your signature project is really taking shape. The case signs are up on the side of the building. You can see the jewelry cases from some distance away. We're getting very close, and it looks very nice. Great job on that project. And I want to thank the mayor and council and staff for having faith in me to serve on our now finished branding committee, and Mr. Icky for his leadership on all sides of that project. I have maintained that we have had 3 distinct historic periods as a city, beginning with the founding of the railroad through here, which founded the town, which lasted roughly about 70 years. Our second period was probably best known as our agrarian time, when we were basically a farming community, a farming sport community, as probably referenced by our current, and it's hard to see, it's on the challenge coin, but our current city logo and seal, if you will, which has gone through a little bit of iteration. We had a number of colors in that first seal. I believe Mr. Fearborn told me at one time there were 2 colors in that seal that do not exist in nature. And then we went to kind of the green palette that we have now, which is very nice. I must say, when the new prototype logo was unveiled to us at the meeting, the mayor and I were a bit stoic. Be prepared to step into 2017 when you see this in about 3 weeks. They did a really good job with it. It is a little different than what Chris and I expected, but I think it shows who we are and where we have come to and where we are going. So keep an open mind, and I think you will be pleased with what you see. Again, thank you for allowing me to serve on that committee.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was called last week and said the city is going to receive an award. Were you available to go get the award? And I said, sure, I'm available. And then the next comment was, oh, by the way, you're going to have to say a few words. Too late, you can't go back. So all I can say is I'm thankful we have a director of communications. Thank you, Mike. But Raymore is one of 2 cities that has received the gold recognition for communities for all ages. And I got to go up there and receive the plaque and take all the credit, but really all the credit is right there. Jim Catterat, David Gress. We had some citizen volunteers that came, and I have to tell you, there was a lot of enthusiasm, not a big crowd, but there's a lot of enthusiasm in that room. And people know who Raymore, Missouri is, that's for sure. And that was a kudos, Jim. I know that was a lot of hard work, but like you said, the work is now just beginning. So we're here to support you, and thank you for allowing me to share that with you, and look forward to, maybe they're gonna have a platinum down the road, so thank you.
There you go. Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start by taking a minute just to thank Mr. Moorhead for being willing and available to be our mayor pro tem for another term. I think it's something, like he said, some of us could do and might be willing to do, but a lot of us don't have the flexibility in our schedule to do that. So we appreciate, Derek, that you're willing to step up and do that for us. Secondly, Mr. Holman mentioned the development with Kay Jewelers. My husband and I this last weekend got to go and look at some houses on the Parade of Homes. And so if you want to see another way we're seeing some great development in the city, looking at houses in the Parade of Homes tour is a good way to see some of the variety, some of the new things that are coming to the city. Some of the houses in Creekmore are pretty incredible. We went to some other communities as well, but I have to say our favorite one was here in Raymore. So add that to your list. I'm not sure how long it goes, but you can look online and find the information. It's in the newspaper as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Berenson.
No comments tonight, thank you.
All right, well, thank you. I also want to thank Mr. Barber for filling in for Derek and I. Thank you for going to the award ceremony. It is a big deal. The Mid-America Regional Council doesn't just give those out like potato chips. They are, it is definitely earned, and our planning staff, kudos to you and David for all the work that you've done on that. As you know, I went to a reunion of the commanders that I served with in Iraq in '09. We got together in New Orleans. Got to tell you a quick story. Walking down the streets of New Orleans, you wouldn't expect to see anybody you would recognize, but ran into Senator Lindsey Graham. Just walked right by me, the former presidential candidate. So that was kind of cool. And stopped and said hi to him. He was really nice. And it was fun visiting with him. It's fun getting together with that group, and I appreciate you standing in for me last Friday. I also wanted to thank the board for their confidence in me to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission. It was a learning curve for me last year as well, but the group is a good group, and they do some quality work. Mr. Cataret provides some excellent guidance for that group, and we appreciate him very much. The last thing I want to talk about is there is a fundraiser this Thursday evening at the Eastside Baptist Church over in Independence. It's way out off of 23rd Street, but it is a fundraising event for the Wagstaff family. As you know, there was an officer that was shot in the line of duty, Thomas Wagstaff with the Independence Police Department, and that fundraiser runs from on April 27th from 6 to 9 p.m. Again, is at the Eastside Baptist Church at 19901 East M78 Highway, or 23rd Street. And the fundraising event is going to be a sports alumni autograph session. Such prior greats as Brian McCray, Mike McFarland, Dennis Leonard, Duron Cherry, Bobby Denier, Bill Moss. They're going to be there to sign autographs. And the cost for those autographs are $10 each, but it is going to for a good reason to support the Wagstaff family, as he has a long recovery period. Looks like he is going to recover, and which we had all thought that might not be a possibility, but he's reaching some levels of accomplishment that are just amazing. Has the doctors amazed as well, and so anyone that would like to support him and his family. This fundraising event should be a fun fundraising event as well. And then I was at the next council meeting going to give my State of the City address, but I'm going to put that off since Mr. Fearborn and others aren't going to be here for the agony. I'm going to wait for them to come back. And so we're going to put that off to the second meeting in May. It should have been tonight, but we had a lot of business on the agenda tonight, and so I'll wait 4 weeks, and then you'll be back for the agony. Mr. Holman.
Just a little bit of a follow-on to your comment about the fundraiser for Tom Wagstaff. Got an update today, and as the mayor said, it can't be emphasized enough. When Tom was struck in the head by a round, there was a lot of misinformation that went around, even among tight police circles, that he had passed away, that he had been run over, that he was ready for organ harvest. He's been moved to a rehabilitation facility in Nebraska, and he is communicating at a level we did not believe would be possible. He is communicating not as much so much as I am here, but he is, my understanding, able to send and receive messages, and the progress is amazing. So I want to believe the prayers are working and that this is good, and so if you can attend, I would highly encourage it. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you, Jay. I appreciate the follow-up on that. If there's nothing else, is there a reason for us to go into executive session? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Your Honor, or Mr. Mayor, move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.
I called Your Honor, too. I just was in court this morning, so I've been...